So they were really excited to start this writing assignment, especially after I showed them the paper with the letterhead. And obviously I wasn't going to hand that out to them until they actually needed it. So the first step was to actually have them listen to the agent out in the field, take their notes. And I had one particular student who was really hard to get engaged with anything. She didn't really want to do anything, especially any kind of writing. And she immediately raised her hand and said, "Can you give me the paper?" She really wanted that paper with the letterhead. And I said, "Well, you got to do the first step first. You got to listen and take notes, and then you'll get a chance to write it on there." And she was really excited, and you could see the difference during that lesson, because she really wanted to get that piece of paper, and it was something so simple, but it was really effective in that way. Anyway, so we started with the writing. They had to listen to the agent out in the field. He was describing the actions, and they did that really well. And I needed to we needed a way to kind of have this continue throughout the whole lesson. So I had to figure out a way. How am I going to go from this stage to the next stage? And the way I did it was the agent was in the field, and he was going to take a closer look. So he tells them that I'm going to cross the street. And when he did, he gets hit by a car. Well, we assume. We don't really know. We just hear a noise, and that's the end of the transcript, basically. So later on in the lesson, they're going to have to try to figure out what happens to the agent, and they're going to actually have to go out into the field. So that was kind of the introduction to getting them out, but in the meantime, they still had to take down these notes. So. Now, everybody in the class had their notes. They didn't necessarily have the exact wording that the agent was using as he was talking, but they all had their own notes, and they had to compare with a partner. And then with their partners, then they would take the letterhead, and they would get a kind of final copy of what the agent had said. And then we kind of put them up around the room. They had to compare with the other students, kind of walk around, make some corrections to what they thought actually was said, and they were really into it. So they kind of did that, and they were ready to move on and get to the next step. So they were still we never left the part of them, their role as the agents. They kind of kept with that throughout. So the next step was to get them actually out in the field and producing the language, and they did so. So they had to take turns of going out there, and one person was out in the field, the other person was back at the office, and they had to communicate to each other what the suspect, the criminal, was actually doing, and they had to use the present continuous to do so. And I thought they did a really good job, and it really just kept them motivated throughout, and they never really lost focus of their role. There were some things that maybe I thought of afterwards that maybe I could have done to improve it. So something along the lines of maybe giving them name tags or badges or something like that, where they kind of had that on them, and we can kind of see how they progress by giving them stars or giving them, you pass stage 1 of the intern training or whatever the case is, and everybody gets a star, and then they'll have that in front of them, and kind of just another way of kind of keeping them motivated. And then just another thing that maybe I didn't really think of, but this is why the planning is important, because my role in this role play was I was the director of the JBI. So they knew that. When they saw the seating chart, they all had agent, their names next to the agent, and mine was with the director. So they knew my role, and I was kind of observing them and seeing how they can handle the job. And there was a problem with this because I also played the role of the agent in the field, and so there was some confusion, because they, at some point when the agent got hit by a car and they were speculating what had happened to him, they thought that the director had died. So there was, I wasn't really careful when I was planning that, because I didn't really think it would be an issue. But there's some ways you can get around that. I could have either played a recording of the agent in the field, or I could have maybe changed my appearance, put a hat and sunglasses, or whatever the case, just so they knew that, okay, now I'm not the director, or we're listening to the agent in the field. So that was something that I thought could have been done a little bit better. And that's, I think that's something that the more you do this, you kind of get a feel for, what works, what doesn't work, and what we need to look for, what we need to think about when we're actually planning a lesson like this. And so even from the first time I used, I tried to use context throughout the lesson, I learned, okay, you need to keep it consistent. You can't lose it, during the lesson. You can't just all of a sudden forget about it and then bring it back. It doesn't work that way. So it's good to have it from beginning to the end and not lose focus of that, because the students really, get really into it, and they really want to do whatever it is, because they feel like they're part of the role play, and I really had good, a lot of success with that class, especially because they sometimes weren't the best class at getting them to do certain activities.